A mysterious woman works as a cleaner in the police station, yet she dances with so much excitement without a care in the world that she's just a music janitor. In her happy mood, she mistakenly pushes a box to the floor containing crucial crime evidence of a murder victim. Looking through some of the pictures, she immediately deciphers what happened. Glancing at the police crime board, she notices that something is wrong with what's on the board, so she cleans a writing that says suspect and changes it to victim. The next day at the police station, the head of investigation, Kadek, and the director of the LAPD, Selena, continues their investigation. The investigator reveals that their primary suspect is the wife of the deceased, known as Lynette Acosta, also a renowned lawyer. However, after the death of her husband, she has suddenly disappeared. Her daughter Lay is out of town because of her studies. At that moment, the man notices the correction on the board and gets really furious, promising that whoever tampered with the evidence will serve time in prison, and asks one of them to find out who messed with the board. Meanwhile, Morgan and her 3 kids are buying groceries from the mall when her oldest daughter begs her for an item, which she refuses, saying they have less to spend. However, the daughter sneaks the item back into the trolley at the paying booth. After calculating the price of the purchase, the cashier calls out a price higher than what Morgan had already calculated. She points out that there must be a mistake in the calculation. After a little argument, she learns that her daughter snuck the last item behind her back. The cashier is impressed by her disapproval and the correct calculations of the actual price. On their way home, Morgan doesn't mind carrying the cart with her on the bus. Her daughter complains about it, but since their car is broken, she has refused to repair it because of the cost. At the station, the team is surprised by the camera footage of Morgan dancing, and at the same time mad at her actions, they visit her to come and explain herself at the station. Upon reaching there and seeing the camera footage, they're curious as to why she had to mess with their evidence. Morgan reveals that she has a weird compulsion to put things right. When she sees a mistake, she's compelled to correct it so she can sleep well at night. Katek is glad to arrest her for tampering with the evidence, but the director brings out the case file, asking her what she thinks about the crime. With her unique analysis and vivid attention to details, she is able to prove her theory that Lynette wasn't the suspect but a victim, affirming that there's a third party at the crime scene and that Lynette was only kidnapped. Since they haven't found her at that moment, one of the investigators walks in and announces that camera footage confirms there was a third person entering the Acosta's home before the crime. This confirms Morgan's theory to be at least true, but Kate's ego is too high, so he tells one of his partners, Oz, to escort Morgan to the prison cell until they conclude what to do with her. After she's escorted, the director points out that they are going to work with what she just said. Even though Kadek is furious that she opened a crime file for a civilian, the director makes it clear that it's because of Morgan that they have a potential lead. Daphne, another investigator, is able to retrieve the home camera footage and finds of the lady Lishka visiting the Aosta home before the actual crime. She is called in for interrogation. Lishka reveals that although she visited the deceased family, that was 3 months ago. She says that the reason for her visit was based on the fact that Lynette defended her boss for assaulting her, and Lynette won the case, even though she was supposed to protect women who are assaulted. However, Kadek reports that according to the camera footage, she was in the Aosta house yesterday, but she denies it, saying she was at home working all day. Morgan is released, and during that moment she notices that the camera footage retrieved from the Acosta's home contains a wrong timestamp and points it out to the team. This causes Katek to be angry, as she is meddling with something that doesn't concern her. As she signs her paperwork and is about to step out, the director calls her back and asks her to elaborate on what she was saying about the wrong timestamp on the camera. She points out that with the wind blowing direction and the direction of the church facing east at that moment, it clearly shows that the lady wasn't at the Acosta's home yesterday. Rather, this footage was from months ago, meaning someone tampered with the camera footage. After revealing this, she walks out of the room and the director goes after her. Curious, she asks how she manages to have such a great mind, and she points out that she has a 160 IQ. However, this comes with a price, as her mind is always on a roller coaster, which causes her to barely maintain a job or a stable relationship. Outside the police station, her boyfriend has been waiting for her and isn't surprised that she's been arrested. At that moment, a police officer assumes her to be a street worker, which offends Morgan, and she begins to hit him. This causes both of them to be thrown back into the cell, as her boyfriend yells at her for being so reckless with her behavior, but they quickly reconcile. Meanwhile, Kadek meets with the daughter of Lynette, who is clearly devastated about the whole situation. Kadek assures her he will find the perpetrators and bring them to justice, but in the meantime he needs to ask her some questions regarding her mom. Letty thinks her mom is dead as well, but he assures her that isn't the case and that they will find her. Kadek goes to the director to ask her permission to search Lynette's office for a letter following what her daughter told him. However, the director points out that, since she's a defense attorney for a prestigious organization, there's no way they can get a warrant to search her office, but Kaitlin makes an exception, saying they at least have to try and search for evidence. The director approves it and tells him to go with Morgan. Kaitlin doesn't like the idea, but the director reminds him that if it wasn't for Morgan, they wouldn't have come this far in the Osta case, and he reluctantly agrees. Morgan makes a call to one of her neighbors and begs him to babysit her kids. In the meantime, she sees Letty sitting not far from her, and from the case file she is able to recognize her as the daughter of Lynette. She goes to her and tries to comfort her by telling her she will help make sure her mom returns to her safely, and she asks if she has a recent picture of her. After scrolling through different pictures, she assures Letty not to worry too much. The director then approaches her to ask for her help in uncovering the case, which she agrees to. Following led to her sister's home, Kaitlin warns Morgan not to say or do anything, as this might jeopardize their plans. Kaitlin proceeds to interrogate Lynette's sister about a letter that her sister received that might help them with the investigation, but she says she knows nothing. Morgan begins to touch some objects in the room, not minding what Kaitlin told her earlier. When the lady asks, Kaitlin defends her by saying she's their consultant. Morgan then proceeds to ask the woman about her profession, and she's surprised that she could see what's written on her computer from such a distance. Kaitlin is very angry with her for talking to the lady, as he asked her not to do anything, but Morgan fires back. However, Morgan points out that they really need to find the letter in Lynette's office either way, because the sister is obviously hiding something, but Kaitlin doesn't want her to join them this time. Angry and realizing that he doesn't need her help, she leaves. Kaitlin meets with the head of the law firm to get his approval to search Lynette's office, but he refuses unless he has a search warrant. Angry, he goes to the bathroom to relieve his frustration, so suddenly Morgan shows up with the letter, revealing she sneaked into Lynette's office to get it. Kaitlin isn't happy with the idea that she broke into an office in a law firm to retrieve the letter. Not only could they be sued, but they could also go bankrupt. But Morgan points out that the letter contains a potential suspect known as Diamond later, who might be the serial killer of Osta. Kaitlin tells her to return the letter back to the office and leave it there the same way she found it, but assures her that they'd interrogate Diamond, but she has to return the letter back to Lynette's office the same way she found it during the interrogation of Diamond. Kaitlin mentions that he was once sued by Lishka for assaulting her, and his lawyer Lynette was able to help him win the case, but before the court hearing, Lynette received a letter from one Sarah, who was trying to sue him too for assaulting her, but later took her own life. Diamond doesn't want to answer the questions, and at that moment they receive a call from Daphne confirming that Diamond wasn't in town during the crime. Morgan doesn't believe it, as she points out that there wasn't any solid reason he was meant to be in Fontana, so she tries to tell Kay to ask Diamond what he was doing out of town, but it was too late, as the report of the officers breaking into the office of a law firm has reached the ears of the director. She is angry about it and scolds Kaitlin for being so reckless, but he points out that it was Morgan's fault that night. Morgan tries to tell him to ask Diamond what he was doing in Fontana, but Kaitlin shuts her out, telling her to go home to her family and leave the investigation to the professionals, as her reckless behavior isn't the way things are done. During dinner, Morgan notices that her daughter isn't happy and is on her phone. She looks concerned, and when she asks her what's wrong, her daughter says she feels useless because she's not as smart as Morgan is. Even her little brother knows complex math and can solve them, but the family traits seem to skip her. She points out that maybe she has the traits of her father, but unfortunately she's never seen him since she was born. This makes Morgan cry after leaving her room in the morning while struggling to prepare the kids for school. Her little son notices a man standing in front of their lawn. When she checks, it's Kaitlin. He asks her why she wants him to ask Diamond about Fontana, so she invites him to explain that Diamond wouldn't have any serious reason to be in Fontana since there's nothing going on in the town. But she notices that during her search in Sophia's home, Lynette's sister, she saw one item that wasn't dusty, and underneath it is written Fontana, meaning Sophia was in Fontana recently, and so was Diamond. Kaitlin points out that at least they were not in town during the crime. This makes Morgan realize something. She remembers a certain flower from her encounter with Letty and asks her neighbor what time it takes for such flowers to die out. He says it's about 4 days. This gives her an idea that maybe Diamond and Sophia were having an affair. He knows he's guilty and was only having an affair with her so he could get access to Lynette, allowing her to help him win the case against Lishka. After dropping the kids at school, Morgan continues to explain that both of them then go to Lynette's house to put pressure on her to help defend him in court. However, her husband was around during that time, so for now they need to confirm the time difference when the crime actually took place. Arriving at the Acosta's home with her vivid analysis, she's able to deduce that Diamond and Sophia were trying to threaten Lynette, but then her husband sees them arguing and grabs a gun since he's not a fighter. Diamond easily grabs the gun from him and shoots him dead, but another problem arises. How is this possible since according to the report, Diamond and Sophia were in Fontana that same day? Being a genius, this isn't a problem for Morgan, who easily solves it. Using her good memory, she recalls that during the time she saw the crime pictures, the flowers on the table were already dead, and Letty had a picture of Lynette holding the same flower 3 days ago, which was blooming before the whole incident, since Sophia was a botanist and Diamond was a security technologist, coupled with the treehouse in the living room and the fact that the house is a smart home, meaning it has its own climate control system. He was able to freeze Acosta's body the next day. Lishka visits the home, so he frames her as the murderer. In Lynette's case, Sophia couldn't harm her sister, so they ended up kidnapping her, probably in Fontana, to buy time to think about what they would do next. Looking through the family photos on the wall, Morgan notices a remote family house that's in Fontana and speculates that might be the place where they're hiding Lynette. Kadek immediately calls his team of police officers so they can quickly raid the building. Upon getting there, they are able to find Lynette still alive as her daughter hugs her. Karate gives her a look of affirmation while the director offers her a position to work officially as their consultant, but she rejects the offer. The next day, after spending time with her daughter, she realizes that the little girl misses her father. She feels like she has been lied to by the authorities about the actual whereabouts of her former husband, so she goes back to the police department and accepts the consulting offer with some terms she wants to abide by. Afterwards, she asks the director to help her with the search for her ex-boyfriend. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video and would love to see more from this channel, please subscribe and turn on notifications.